For the longest time, we believed the fate of the lands between was shaped by Marika's will alone, a shaman woman tormented by the horn scent long ago. Perhaps it was that trauma which drove her to godhood, to remove destined death, to live eternally, to take revenge. But now we learn that she was never alone. At her side was Meta, an incomprehensible being sent by the same greater will that would one day abandon it. So it is that a blind mother and her broken children have steered humanity since the beginning. Thus has the lore of Elden Ring been unhinged from the start. This story is in no small part the story of Count Ymir, a Carian astrologer who looked past the moon to the lightless abyss beyond. Ymir is a DLC character, but what if I told you that he might have been depicted in the base game as well? This is the Carian inverted statue. It's a key item given to you by Rani towards the end of her quest line, and the man here bears a striking resemblance to Ymir, from the pointed hat tied with fabric under the chin to the very patterns upon his robes. Even the crystal ball he holds could conceivably have belonged to Ymir, as we see such a crystal ball at the tip of his maternal staff later in the questline. So I like to think that Ymir is the man depicted by this statue, a high-ranking sorcerer who was worthy of such depiction, hand raised almost as if he's preaching. The lore explains that he was well known for his recitations. In particular, the beloved Stardust Talisman bears one such quote from Ymir: "One need only envision the romance of the stars above, with adoration for stardust in one's heart, to become a great sorcerer. Do so, and you will know love." Another link between Ymir and this statue is Preceptor Miriam, who resides in the very same study hall that the Carian inverted statue unlocks. And Ymir is connected to Miriam by way of this teleportation spell. It's a signature of Ymir's that he both teaches and relies upon heavily in combat. Miriam herself was such a master of this sorcery that it came to bear the name Miriam's Vanishing. And while I stress this is speculation, I think that Ymir favoring this spell, and looking like the statue, and the statue leading to Miriam's study hall, helps to confirm that this is indeed him. The Lady Miriam was a Carian preceptor, one of the scholars who served as an instructor to the Carian royals, and all preceptors wore these wide-brimmed hats adorned with their constellations. They were a symbol of the Carians' ancestral connection to the ancient astrologers. But underneath this hat is another symbol upon the mask of confidence, its mouth sewn shut with gold thread in Radigan's signature cross-stitch pattern. For when Radigan married Renala, he ordered the Carian magic preceptors to don these masks, to make it clear that all their matters were to be kept strictly private. The reason I'm detailing Radigan's involvement here is because I believe Caria might have begun to change culturally thanks to his influence, and I believe Ymir might have been a part of Caria during this time, caught between the old Carian ways and Radigan's devout order. To many, it might sound strange for me to suggest that the Carians might embrace faith, for the Carians were known for their astrology and sorcery, right? Arts guided by intelligence and reason, not devotion. And yet, Leonia is home to 5 churches, the Cathedral of Manus Celes, and a temple quarter as well. Plus, Ymir himself holds the title High Priest, a role that seems out of place in traditional Carian hierarchy, unless of course he held that title at this crossroads in Leonia's history. A time when reason wed with faith. A time when even a dogged turtle pope could rise to prominence.
I welcome you to the Church of Vows. I'm would like to share my knowledge with you. Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The order of the Erdtree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven. This miracle blesses the Church to this day.
So I think it's fair to suggest that the Leonians picked up some holy habits as a result of Radagon's influence, a figure who, notably, dedicated himself to both sorcery and incantation. Thus did the hero aspire to be complete.
Whether it be sorcery or incantations, learning should not fetter you to one side or the other.
So it is that a Cathedral of the Hand was built upon the Moonlight Plateau to honor the two fingers, a place known as Manus Celeste. Similarly, Manus Meta was erected in the land that would become the Realm of Shadow. All of this is to say that Ymir, thanks to his status as High Priest, likely was of high standing among the Carians during the union of Renala and Radagon. Of course, he also bore the title of Count, or Lord, in the original Genesis, a noble title that likely placed him shoulder to shoulder with the Carian royals themselves. Indeed, he even instructed Renala's own sister, R'hllana, in the sorcerous arts, and hence was likely chosen as a part of her entourage for the Carian foray into the Realm of Shadow. Though, of course, this presumes that Ymir wasn't just always stationed at Manus Meta, back before the realm was veiled, which is always possible as well. But regardless of when he was stationed at Manus Meta, there came a time after the war when Ymir saw fit to abandon what once defined him, his own Carian sovereignty, which he abandoned quite literally in the form of a spell that was left to be scavenged in a dark cave below the cathedral. Ymir's relinquishing of his sovereignty may explain one of the three key differences between his attire and the attire on the Carian inverted statue. The first is the hollowed out section of his high priest hat, a detail that's completely absent from the statue. One could take this hole in Ymir's hat as proof that Ymir is not depicted by the statue, but personally, I prefer to see the hole's later appearance as part of a narrative, an alteration to his clothing that tells a story. After all, Ymir's questline shows that he's no stranger to altering his robes to reflect who he truly is inside, and the description of the High Priest hat reveals the nature of this alteration in particular. It states, "The circular design at the top represents the greater will and its lightless abyss. Depicting such a void upon his hat would have been a peculiar choice for a Carian in those days. Thus, I reason that this alteration might have emerged later in Ymir's life, at a time when he was no longer looking to the moon, but beyond it, to the void. Indeed, Count Ymir would go on to abandon his allegiance to the moon. To him, it was merely the closest of the celestial bodies, and nothing more."
I, too, am a glintstone sorcerer. We study the stars and examine the life therein. Are you familiar with our findings? Long ago, we began as stardust, born of a great rupture far across the skies. We, too, are children of the greater will. Is that not divine? Is that not sublime? And yet, none can fathom its implications. Its utter brilliance.
This dialogue contains one of the biggest revelations in the DLC, namely the idea that humanity began as stardust born of rupture, born from the void. Now, life coming from the lightless void is nothing new in Elden Ring lore. One can look to the falling star beasts as proof of that. These are stars, fallen from the lightless dark that is their home. The sorcerer Azur is another example. When he looked into the primeval current, which is the oldest starry expanse, what he saw was darkness, an abyss, and yet his encounter with this void inspired Comet Azur, a spell that fires a torrent from what is described as the place thought to be the origin of glintstone. It's another example of something coming from nothing. And now we know from Ymir that mankind, and likely the golden crucible upon the earth as well, is ultimately born from the abyss. Specifically, the Greater Will's abyss. This aligns perfectly with Hyetta's dialogue regarding the Greater Will. At the end of her questline, she speaks of it, and the unfathomable singularity from which it emerged. We're told that all that there is came from the one great, which fractured and was no more. But a part of it, its greater will, endured. And in time, that will made contact with the lands between, reaching out across the cosmos via its envoys. The first of which was Meta, the mother of fingers. The mother of all two fingers and finger creepers was in turn a magnificently gleaming daughter of the Greater Will, and the first shooting star to fall upon the lands between. So Meta arrived before the other shooting stars, and since the Elden Beast also made landfall upon a star, that means there was a time, however brief, when life in the lands between existed without the Elden Ring, a time before Order. And for some of that time, Meta was already here. I've always thought that this suggests Meta was a kind of scout, one sent to look for signs of crucible life, worthy to receive the Elden Ring. This idea aligns with what we know about the Fingers and their role as the Greater Will's envoys. We know that the Two Fingers took it upon themselves to select worthy candidates among the creatures of the lands between. These were the Empyreans, chosen by the Fingers. And we know that fingers have been considered a sign of intelligence in this world. Intelligence that, according to the Cinkadea, was granted. Empyreans chosen. Intelligence granted. These are words of bestowal, and I think they help to characterize Meta and her children as well. They were the fingers that held the strings. They were the fingers that point the way. And what if they didn't just point the way for humanity? What if, long before, they had pointed the way for the ancient dragons as well? I think that's very likely, actually. We know that Placidusax was Elden Lord in the time before the Erd Tree. Thus, the dragons had the Elden Ring, even if it looked a bit different back then. And since the Elden Ring arrived after Meta, she must have already made landfall when the dragons were around. So, if she was present in those earliest days, then it's possible, maybe even likely, that she began to shape dragon culture before the Greater Will ever took root in their society. Indeed, we do see signs that the Fingers were active at this time, not so much with the dragons themselves, but certainly with the beastmen who served them. The five-fingered Cinkadea dagger was given to high-ranking clergymen, and it celebrated a beast's 5 fingers, which were considered symbolic of the intelligence once granted upon their kind. It all points back to Meta. You've explored Farum Azula, so you know how this ends. Their civilization was fated for ruin. I wonder how the Fingers felt about the downfall of dragon civilization. Did they anticipate it? Were they complicit? Or did they just pick up the pieces after the fall? Because fall it did. Placidusax's god, who presumably was the vessel for the Elden Ring, fled in circumstances that we can only speculate about. And it's not talked about enough that there is a mysterious god of the dragons who just disappeared with the Elden Ring. Who was this god? Where did they go? What did they do while absent? Why did they leave? Any answers have vanished with them. But eventually, the Elden Ring would appear in history again, and when it did, it was wielded by a Numen woman, a shaman in great need, whose village stood adjacent to finger ruins, Marika. Again, there's a great deal of history missing around Marika's ascent, but whether it was through force or seduction, we know this. She stood at the Hornsent's Gate of Divinity, holding aloft what appear to be golden threads of the Elden Ring. Now, I'm not sure how Marika acquired the Elden Ring after the dragons, but I bet the fingers were involved. Remember, the fingers withhold the benediction of the Elden Ring's great runes, and without this benediction, the great runes that you receive from the demigods are powerless. Not to mention, the fingers take it upon themselves to be the ones who choose Empyreans. So all of that is to say that the fingers clearly claim some power over the Elden Ring and power over those who wield it as well. Clearly they were a part of Marika's reign, and it's very likely that they were the ones behind the planting of the Erd Tree itself, here and perhaps in other worlds as well. Let me explain. Ring the bells in the finger ruins of Rhea or Deo, and you'll receive a seed talisman. The description reads, "This age-old artifact also depicts the two fingers, perhaps harking back to the birth of the Erd Tree." The implication here is clear. The two fingers may have had a hand in the Erd Tree's creation, perhaps even offering up an Erd Tree seed for planting. And to who else but Marika? Marika was certainly in great need of their help. Her kind had been tortured in this Hornsent pursuit of sainthood, and what better revenge than to rise as her torturer's own wife, only to betray them later. So Marika became a god vessel for the Elden Ring, but all vessels are destined to one day break. Thus a successor would one day need to be chosen, an Empyrean, to claim the Elden Ring and lead a new order, perhaps a glow-eyed queen, a goddess of rot, a carrion princess. In retrospect, the two fingers choosing from such a wildly diverse set of Empyreans to succeed Marika kind of makes perfect sense now. These are alien creatures. What do they care about the specifics of order? They don't care if there's an order of death or rot or the moon, so long as they are the ones pulling the strings, I think. But the truly unsettling thing about the fingers isn't just that they're these alien creatures dictating the future of this world, it's that they're doing it all while broken and blind. Skip ahead in Elden Ring lore, and it becomes clear something is deeply wrong with the two fingers. Even a few characters in the base game had already begun to express this same unease. Long ago, Gideon gained true knowledge after his long exchange with the two fingers, discovering all had been broken long ago, that the trembling fingers bent with age, and the Erd Tree itself were no exception. But when were they broken? That's the question. According to Vare, it happened when the Elden Ring shattered. He says that the two fingers were then corrupted, that their words became nothing more than rambling, senile delusions, and that their guidance for the tarnished became obscure. Not that they had any love for the tarnished to begin with. So that's the simplest explanation, that the fingers were simply corrupted by the shattering of the Elden Ring, which they are tied to, after all. But there's another explanation, and it's that Meta herself might have been wounded long ago. Specifically wounded by
Serosh.
Thou didst me good service, Serosh. I've given thee courtesy enough. Now I fight as Horalu. Warrior!
What the fuck?
Strength.
Vamos.
Marcus.
Yeah. Then I was seen it here again. Never thought I would. What he does to those bodies. It was him. No question. That monster. He's lurking round here.
Marika's tit. Marika's tits.
You must be hungry.
Well. Okay.
thy strength.